Hi guys, this video is for anybody who's trying to make a running comeback. So for instance, you've run regularly and you've had a bit of a break, few months break, or you've had a year or so, even more, maybe a couple of years break, where you've just run once or twice, or maybe not run at all. But also for novice runners who's just taken up running for the first time. And I'm going to first explain to you what happens to our bodies when we train and when we run. What systems are affected, what systems are affected and how they're affected when we don't train, when we just rest or we do other sports. Then we're going to look at how long the body takes to grow stronger, and we're going to look at more things than just muscles, and what this means for injury risk. And then lastly, I'll give you some tips on how you can structure your training for that first year when you come back to running, or if you're new to running, to help prevent injuries from just ramping up your training too quickly. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Maryke. I'm one of the physiotherapists from sportsinjuryphysio.com, where you can get online physiotherapy assessment as well as treatment for your injuries. Have a look at the description of this video if you want a link to our website. Brilliant. So let's get the first picture up there. What happens to our bodies when we train? You may have seen me use this graph quite a few times because it's such an important one. And we tend to forget about what happens to our bodies when we train. We just want to go more. But the thing is, so if you look at that line, baseline is your baseline strength today before you do a workout. Then you start your workout, so we're talking running workout, pretty much any workout really, and the tissue starts to fatigue and you're starting to get micro damage. And that's not a problem. That's what we want, because when the body repairs the micro damage, you grow stronger, and it can't grow stronger if you don't get the micro damage. So when you stop your exercise, that's the bottom of the curve, you then have your rest period. And during that period, the body now releases all its hormones and stuff that it needs to release to rebuild everything stronger. And then if you see that green line that goes above your baseline, if you train in that period where you're above that baseline, that's when you're now stronger than before. And if you train there, that baseline keeps on getting stronger and stronger and stronger. So this is what we end up doing. Now I pinched this one from our Achilles website. So this is with regards to Achilles, but it works the same for every part of the body. Now when we run, we tend to notice or think mostly about our cardiovascular system. So how hard we're breathing, our heart rate, and our muscles, because those are the things that we can feel and can experience. So it's very easy for us to gauge how fit we are cardiovascularly, because it depends on how out of breath you are and how quickly you recover after your training. And it's also quite easy to feel your muscles, how tight they are, how tired they feel, how they grow stronger, and you can see them grow stronger. But the tissue we forget about is that micro damage also takes place in your bones, your cartilage, your ligaments, and your tendons. And it's needed, because if you don't do anything, those structures aren't strong. So you need to strengthen them to be able to cope with your loads of running. So I'm going to come back to that in a minute. So just keep it in your head that it's not just muscles and cardiovascular system we're talking about here. We're also talking about the cartilage that lines your joints, the ligaments that support them, the tendons, as well as your bones. Now, what happens if we don't train? So you've had this break from training. All of these systems degrades. So just as you can grow stronger over time through exercise, if you stop exercise, the body starts to grow weaker. And my favorite picture to depict this is this one. Still waiting for my muscles to grow stronger, and he's just lying on the couch. We all know that you can't get strong muscles if you don't train them regularly. But again, we forget that actually the other tissue in the body acts exactly the same way. Every time you do a training session, it acts as a strength stimulus for your bones, your tendons, your ligaments, your cartilage, all of that. But the problem is that different systems in the body takes longer to repair than other systems. So if we can get back to this picture, if we look at that curve that we've got there, muscles takes roughly 24 hours to recover after exercise. If it's really high intensity exercise, it may take about 48 hours. Tendons, on the other hand, tend to usually take at least 48 hours and often 72 hours to recover. And that's because they make their makeup is different. So muscles have loads of blood circulation going through them. They are made up of muscle fibers, and the turnover is really quick. Whereas tendons and ligaments and cartilage is mainly made up of collagen. And collagen fibers, the turnover in those structures, it doesn't have a good blood supply in the first place. And that's fine. That's normal for them. That's how they should be. But it means also that the turnover of new cells is much more slower. So if you look at that curve, they are going to take much longer to react to your training. Cardiovascular system reacts quite quickly. Of course, your genetics play a role in this as well. You've got people who really react quickly to exercise and can just adapt. And you've even got the total opposite of the spectrum, where they may have genetic stuff going on that their muscles and things can't adapt that quickly. So it's not a set line for everybody to follow, that you have to take this long to get to a certain stage. You have to adapt it to your own body as well. But I'm going to give you some pointers to just keep in mind. So what this basically means is, when you've had a long break from exercise or you're a novice runner, you will see gains in muscle strength and cardiovascular system very quickly. And the classic story that I get from runners who's injured, who come in, that falls into those two groups, is that it's your typical person who's done a couch to 5K and they've run 5K. Brilliant. And they felt really good with it. And now 5Ks are getting easy. So they're aiming for 10Ks. But this is all within a few months that they're starting to ramp up. And they may get away with that. And they may be perfect with a 10K even. So immediately, well, if I can run 10K, I can do 21K. Now, some people can get away with that if you do that within 1 year. And it pretty much depends on your training status beforehand as well. If you were a bit fitter and stuff, your tissue will be more robust. But if you are on the spectrum where you've not actually done much exercise until you started the couch to 5K and you don't recover that quickly, then ramping up to 21Ks within a year of starting running is a bit fast for your tendons and your ligaments and your joints and everything, the cartilage, to adapt at the same speed as your muscles and your cardiovascular system. So you're putting yourself at a much higher risk of injury then, and overuse injuries, because you're just not giving it that recovery that it needs to grow stronger. So instead of growing stronger, it's actually growing weaker, because you're not ever training in the green cycle. You tend to be training the cartilage and stuff in the yellow cycle. So that's something important to keep in mind. Especially most runners new runners can get away with doing a 21K within a year or so of starting, I tend to find. But if you're aiming to do a marathon within the second year of starting running from being a novice, you may be looking for trouble. And you're likely, unless you're very good with managing your training, will end up with an injury of some sorts. In my experience, it takes about 2 years of consistent running before somebody is bulletproof, kind of their body, to really cope with the volume of training you need to be doing to be able to complete the marathon comfortably. So of course you will be able to complete it if you do less training. It's just that you may end up with an injury from it. Now, same thing for people who's been sporty all their lives. And classic one that comes in with this is somebody who, they were really good runners in their youth, so may have even competed at a national level, or just really very good recreational times. But then somewhere in their 30s, they fell out of love with sport, or they got babies and had little children and the running had to go out the door, or work just increased. And they've had a break from running. So we're looking at a few years of a break, and then they want to come back. Now, the problem here is that if you were a decent runner in your younger days, you likely have a superior cardiovascular system in any case, and a superior recovery rate. So your muscles and cardiovascular system will very quickly allow you to ramp up the speed training and the intensity training, because you'll just be fine with that. Your stats will look good on your heart rate. Everything will tell you you're okay. But your tendons and your ligaments and your joints have likely, would have deconditioned if you've not done any impact sports to keep them conditioned in the years that you had a break from regular running. So if you ramp it up at the pace that your cardiovascular system can adapt, you may end up with injuries in your tendons and your ligaments and things, just because that tissue can't adapt that quickly, and you've now degraded it for a few years. Because think about it, if you were a good runner in your 20s, you had all your childhood years that you built up the strength in those tendons and stuff. And you know how much kids do sport. And then you've had a break in your 30s, so coming back then, all of those structures won't be as strong. There's actually a third category who also needs to take care here. And it's anybody who's had an injury that's taken them out of training for something more than a few weeks. Because the longer you're out of training and regular training, everything else also degrades. And everything else may actually come back more quickly than what that injury site does. So just keep that in mind as well. That is not just about what my heart rate is saying, how my muscles are feeling. There are other things at play here. So how can you prevent injuring yourself if you fall into those categories? The first one is that you've got to train with your head, not your heart. And what that means is you've got to work out a training program. Because I promise you, and I've been there multiple times and I should know better, but I still don't, and make this mistake every now and again, that you get on that runner's high where everything starts to feel easy. You can get up in the morning, you open your eyes and you go, 10Ks, yeah, let's go for it. And then it's very easy to just keep on pushing the pace, keep on doing too many runs at too high intensity and not listening when you're getting niggles, because you kind of become addicted to the running and you don't want to break your streak. So you have to create a plan for yourself, and then you've got to stick to it. Of course, adapt it if you find you can adapt it, but stick to it. So the main things to include in that plan is that you need to look at your overall year that you want to be training. So, and that you definitely make sure that you put in a good few months of base training first. So that means time on feet, not really doing intense speed sessions. If anything, yes, work in some tempo runs and things, but not full out tempo runs. Because remember, the faster you run, the greater the force through the tendons and the ligaments and the joints. So you want to really build that force over several months. So initially the tempo runs will be just a few 20-30 seconds faster than what your normal slow comfortable running pace is. So think about how you ramp that up over time if you already got a good base of just easy running. Then the second thing is consider putting in a recovery week every 3rd to 4th week. That you just drop down your volume slightly and drop down the intensity slightly to allow your body to consolidate and catch up, that if you've violated the rest periods, that you then give it, say, okay, sorry, just have a week here where things are easy and you can fully adapt to everything. And then you build again from there. So there's really good evidence, especially for strength training, from strength training research, that can actually prevent overuse injuries. And the running community has been applying that more and more and more and seems to be getting the same results from that. So that's a really important factor to, especially if you're doing high volumes of training. Just think about that 3rd or 4th week to bring the volume down a little bit or bring the intensity down a bit. Then look at your year, your training year. So people will often look at how hard elite athletes train and the volumes they train at, the intensities they train at, the strength workouts they do. But what they forget is that these athletes have a natural periodization in their year where they'll have certain periods where they just build base strength and base endurance. And then as the competition ramps up and the season comes closer, they'll increase the running intensity, but they'll decrease the volume of the strength training so that they're just getting quality strength training in there. And that happens every year, so that they'll have ebbs and flows with that. So it allows the body that relative recovery, and then they can push it again. If you're going to push your intensity from this moment all the way through the year and just want to keep on seeing gains month on month on month, you're going to run into trouble because you're not giving the body that recovery period that it needs. So have a sit down and just look at when is the natural time in your year to take a little bit easier and just kind of allow recovery. And usually the winter periods is a good time, especially if you live in a place where there's a lot of snow or things like that. Then specifically with novice runners in mind, if you've come from a couch to 5K without a lot of running sport history in the last couple of years, so if you've played regular football or you've done other sports that involves a lot of running on a regular basis, you may not fall into this category fully. But if you're a novice runner who's not really done much running, it's been mostly cycling or gym or things like that, then really consider taking a year to build up to a 21K. And if you're interested in running a marathon, do 2 full years of consistent training before you start training for a marathon. That would be the best way to actually bulletproof your legs against overuse injuries. Or if you want to do that marathon earlier on, so say for instance you've just run for a year and you really fancy doing a marathon, be realistic with your times, because remember, faster running, higher forces. So if you're a novice runner, you've not got a lot of mileage or consistent mileage for more than 2 years, then aim for a really slow marathon. Just complete it. That again would be much smaller risk of injury than trying to go for, I really want to do this under 4 hours, I really want to do my best at this. You're much better off just completing the distance and getting the distance in your legs than trying to do it fast. Right, I hope that made sense. So basically the message here is, don't just focus on the systems that you can feel, like the cardiovascular system and the muscles, but also keep in mind that the systems that you can't feel, like your cartilage, your joints, your ligaments and your tendons, take a bit longer for the turnover process of new fibers to form, and that you need to maybe just train a bit more with your head rather than your heart. Excellent. So if you've got any questions, let me know. You're welcome to message me or just comment on this video. And if you need more help with an injury, you're welcome to consult one of us through video call. Link to the website is in the description of this video. Take care.